Welcome back to the second course stream of this week. Where had we left off? Well, we had talked about how some Western artists actually started to live and paint in China, like George Shinnery, and made landscape paintings and other paintings in the Western style. And Chinese literati, Chinese people saw these and left us what is usually referred to as Ekphrastic poetry. And we're going to read some of that poetry now. Now, I have to tell you that only the poems survive, and we do not know which paintings the painter looked at. So I'm just guessing. I'm just putting some paintings with these poems that might have been the object the poet looked at, gazed at. But this is just purely guesswork. So let's have a look at one of these. So this is from, maybe the late 17th, early 18th century. And it's called On an English Painting. A small painting. Clouds and woods, unreal but real. I stumbled on a thing I have never seen before. Its palette is not of a Chinese brush. The flowers and trees, however, are of a Cathay spring. The rippling water flows east, reaching the sea. Wearing southern dress, I am heading for Canton. For some time now, I have longed to live abroad. Don't think it strange that I inquire about this painting. If you're studying Chinese or you are interested in learning Chinese or Chinese poetry, or you already know Chinese, we can also read this in Chinese since it's pretty short, so we can do this together. 英肌里画师彻浮云林幻夜真无端问见一番信丹青不是至那笔画目孩童正淡春榆树东流种刀海乐场南去即通津年来颇有聚医院莫怪批图数问人 Now, this person, Brother Chengjiu, it's probably a Buddhist name, was the son of a Ming loyalist who gained a local reputation as a Chan Buddhist poet in Canton. So, a Ming loyalist was somebody after the Ming had come to an end, did not want to swear allegiance to the Qing and sort of continue to support the Ming. What's really interesting is that the poet seems to express some geographical awareness. So he calls this place then from where this painting is, or the painter is coming, England, Yingjili. Okay, so there is a knowledge already of places beyond China in Europe, like England, right? And I told you that when we looked at Matteo Ricci's map, that a lot of those geographical terms that Matteo Ricci introduced of the world that was not known to the Chinese was somewhat standardized by Matteo Ricci at that time. There is clearly an appreciation for these unfamiliar aesthetics and techniques, which probably are oil, right? It seems that this kind of painting is still very much a rarity, right? He speaks about a chance encounter, but it kindles clearly his curiosity about the lands beyond China. So I told you that the elites in Beijing were not particularly, at first at least, impressed by these Western-style paintings, but this guy clearly does not share their parochialism, their sort of somewhat conservative thinking, right? He is really quite impressed, and I think he likes what he sees. Here is another poem, and maybe this time we'll do it the other way around. We can read the Chinese first, and then we'll look at the English. 一幅西洋画的城，千盘万去压身红。定身弯曲一身入，着手摸来四张平。唤出楼台甚七阶，描将人物带美声。壁间高挂众黄货，错人邻家院落横. And you'll probably notice that the lines of the poem are all of the same length, consist of 7 characters. It's either 5 or 7. And the form of the poem and an intrinsic rhyme pattern was actually very important, and it was sort of a show of your skill as a poet if you were able to abide by these perfect rhyme and length schemes. But that's just as a side note. So let's have a look at the English translation of this then. A Western painting, painted well, the brushwork exquisite, the view deep and wide. When I fix my mind to linger in it, my body seems to enter, but when you touch it, you hit a flat surface. Buildings magically protruding, an optical illusion solidified, people drawn skillfully, their facial features highlighted. Hung up on a wall, the picture causes much confusion and is mistaken for a view of the yard next door. Isn't that funny? And again, maybe this is what the person looked at. We're not quite sure. But he clearly describes use of oil and the creation of a three-dimensional illusion. And this was all foreign to traditional Chinese painters and poets. But again, I think we see a genuine appreciation of the illusion that is created by the painting. So, by the 1840s, Chinese painters in Canton, these export painters making painting for export, these trade paintings, had mastered these techniques quite well, and they were also appreciated by locals. So sometimes paintings that are called Western paintings or Yanghua might have actually been done by Chinese painters in the Western style. So that is something we're not entirely sure. But again, I think this is a really interesting poem that again tells us actually quite a lot about the way Chinese at that time thought about the West or these Western techniques. Let's have a look at another one. This one is a little longer, so we'll just look at the English translation. If you like to read the Chinese, it's on the right. This is just the first part. So this is from actually a commissioner of education, Wang Fanggang, who was actually quite famous, quite important. He had come down from Beijing. He worked for the central government. He resided in Canton for a while in the 1760s, and it's probably there where, again, he came into contact with Western or Western style paintings. Foul and fair weather, far and near, over a single river. Birch white rural huts, no towns in view. 3 islands bound together by 7 channels. Men, cattle, and wild beasts are right in front of you. People sitting and standing. Some are leading animals. Green and yellow fields above and below. Girls dancing, their earrings so pretty. The colors of their felt garments so rich. What seems like white lines first turns into waterfalls. The green expanse grows deeper bit by bit. The line of the horizon melts into the remote sky. Towering clouds rising, chasing each other into the distance. So, again, this is a Western or Western style image. It's difficult to say. It appears to be extremely colorful, so maybe, again, it's most likely oil or oil on glass. He captures the depth by describing the use of perspective. Right? Remember that was something new. Distances are distinguishable. Horizon fading into the sky. Clearly there is a three-dimensionality to the painting. Different shades of light, right? All of those things he points out. And he seems to be generally moved by the execution of the painting and not merely by the skill, right? And he seems to suggest that there is some innate aesthetic quality. The painting invites the observer to enter the landscape, which is actually something that Chinese painting traditionally did, and that often, Chinese believed was absent from Western art. So again, this is just guesswork. This might be the kind of landscape he's looking at. This is a landscape in the south of China. Talks about these white huts, talks about the river, talks about the boats, and this is actually a reverse painting on glass. So that was something that was very popular in Europe in the 17th, 18th century, to paint oil on glass, sometimes reverse or on mirrors, and something that was completely new in China, and that Chinese elites actually thought was pretty exciting. So I said this was just the first part. Let's read the second part of the poem. For 10,000 miles the brushwork traces the circular undulations of the wide ocean, just like threads of women's hair finely tied, or their facial features delicate to the extreme. No Chinese skills or colors adorn their paintings. As the distant markets have everything for sale, they use deer hair brushes and fine inks, but the skillfulness of their craft is not limited to their use. These screens compete in splendor with the tribute gifts that in the time of Sung the Japanese monk Choren brought us. Byzantine beauties surprise even the famous painter Lung Mian, and that is not only because of their splendid colors. Dressed in a fine gown with age-old patterns, bats on the fan, a couch inlaid with mother of pearl, the ocean is at rest, merchants assembling on the shore. In the gentle wind one can hear ships mooring at Whampoa. And Whampoa was actually the mooring place at the delta of the Pearl River, a little down from Canton. So there's actually a clear reference here to the Pearl River, right? So the landscape appears to be a fusion of Europe and Lingnan, the southern parts of China. White huts, green fields. But then he speaks about Byzantine women, right? And there is a reference to tribute goods, right? I mentioned that this is most likely a reverse painting, reverse painted on glass. So again, this could be a Western style, or it could be the work of a Canton workshop. But it's really interesting how he engages with both Western techniques. He comments on the availability of certain products and paints that wouldn't be available in China. But again, it clearly is a Chinese scene, a Chinese landscape. And this is, by the way, a painting of Whampoa from the 1850s. So again, maybe this is the kind of painting he looked at. Now, Chinese reverse glass paintings was something that became quite popular during the late Qing dynasty. So I said that it was very popular in Europe, and Europeans brought the technique to China, and Chinese local artists, learned how to do it. And here you have some examples of that reverse painting on glass, of sort of, again, you sort of have this fusion of East and West, right? Some of these people look Western. Then on the right you have a Chinese. There's often also a sort of fusion of dress, of landscapes. So these were very popular commodities, both in China, where the technique was a novelty, but then also in Europe. And a lot of these, right, these sort of hybrids were re-exported to Europe. But again, they were also consumed locally. So Wang, right, our poet, is genuinely moved by the painting's complexity, and he praises the skillful execution, and he observes the use of exquisite brushes and fine paints, right? Even if they were alien, right, kind of new, unknown, still greatly, impress him, greatly charm him. And again, he seems to insinuate that there is a real aesthetic quality to the painting that cannot be merely attributed to fine craftsmanship. Let's look at a couple more examples. So the next examples are the paintings are of a different kind. Most likely these are watercolors or gouache on paper or pith. Pith was a material that looks like paper, but that was actually the inside of a grass that grew in southern China, a little bit like bamboo. And you opened it up and you sort of had a white, almost like styrofoam, and you could cut it into very thin sheets and then you could paint on it. That's pith. So, and this one is called Viewing Western Paintings, around 1820s. At the end of the year, the markets are plentiful and the style of painting for sale is increasingly Western. My children bought several such paintings, pasted them on the walls in the bedrooms, door after door leading into the distance, long corridors squeezed between tall buildings, the clear sky without a speck, a hint of coolness in the summer heat, whitewashed walls embraced the road, dark woods and apricot groves by the side, eagles darting into the sky, unusual beasts roaming the fields. Who would have thought that within my humble walls there could be such place to wander about? Jilun's house in Jinggu and Li Xiang's in Pingquan. These rich people, where are they now? In old age they lived amid the sick and poor side. How much better to enter this painting when you get up and to wander inside it. So again, a lot of interesting things that we learned from this poem, right? It seems that these images, these Western style images, very inexpensive, readily available, sold everywhere on the markets. That they are Western or Western style, they're very popular with the local population. And again, there's the user's perspective, and this idea that the painting invites you to enter it, right? This is, again, a quality that usually was only associated with Chinese paintings, but here clearly painting likewise invites you to enter, especially because of the execution of distance perspective, right? Again, so this is the kind of painting he might have looked at. We don't know, we can only guess, right? The fact that these paintings were purchased to enhance the New Year's festivities then again suggests that these Western style paintings had come to constitute something that, cultural critics sometimes called cultural indigenization, meaning a foreign cultural product is essentially reinvented, re-articulated in a local setting. Now, over the course of the late 18th and through the 19th centuries, styles and techniques used by these Canton artisans, blended Chinese and Western techniques, often Western techniques, and for that reason were still referred to as Western, even though they technically were made in China. Now, they became really part of that, early modern Chinese consumption pattern, right? Especially in the South. People consumed them, bought them, liked them, wrote poems about them, right? And hence really are a true product of this Sino-Western encounter and cross-cultural exchange. If you want to see some more of these images, I am posting here a link to a journal, the Bulletin. It's the Bulletin of the California State Library Foundation. And I actually wrote an article for this journal a few years ago about these kind of paintings, not the poems, but the paintings. Because our library at San Francisco State, or I should say the Sutro Collection, which is housed at the very top floors of our library, houses a big collection of these trade paintings, of these paintings, these kind of paintings that were done in the South, in using Western techniques, some of them for export. And I encourage all of you to take a look at these paintings. Either in the library you can have a look at the real thing, or if you want to do it from the comfort of your home, just click that link and it'll take you right here, and again you'll have some really nice images. You can zoom in and it also gives you some additional explanations. So this is a real treat, a real treasure that is housed in our library. And we will continue our exploration of Sino-Western encounters next week, when we will start looking at the Western reception of China in the 17th and 18th century. So see you next week.